Today you are going to be benefiting from my hindsight. So this is 10 steps to an easy renovation. Okay, so there's no such thing as an easy renovation, so perhaps the word to use would be easier renovation. Now, I've been through many over the years, and today is going to sound a little bit like I'm having a downer on builders, and it's not necessarily the case. I've had good experiences as well as bad, but really the following tips are just going to help you make the most of your builder and hopefully take some of the stress away. So, number one, consider your circumstances. So for example, just plucking one out of the sky. If you are about to have your first baby, do not, I repeat, do not take on a 7-bedroom Victorian house that hasn't been touched in over 40 years, that needs rewiring, replumbing, new walls or walls replastered, new ceilings, bathrooms extended, new bathrooms, kitchen moved, new kitchen, and a whole host of other issues. It has been one of the most stressful situations of my life, and I like renovating houses. So do not underestimate how much those little creatures are going to zap your energy and your brain cells when they're in your tummy and when they're running around. So if you are thinking of having a family and you need more space, get the job done first before the baby making starts, if you still have the energy to do that. Now, if that's too late, well, best of luck to you. Definitely follow the tips I'm going to give you now. Number two, get the right recommendation where a builder is concerned. It's not enough for somebody down the road to recommend a builder who maybe did an extension on their modern house if you're doing a Victorian renovation. We've made that mistake, took on a builder that was recommended to us, and within a couple of weeks was telling us that we should rip down our Victorian cornice around the ceiling and ceiling roses to plasterboard over them. Now, probably because it would have made his life easier, but also because he didn't seem to care much about original Victorian features. Number three. Now this one is very obvious, but I'm going to state it anyway. Set a budget, set deadlines. Now, do not expect to stick to that budget or to those deadlines. Now, where the deadlines are concerned, I would say in my experience that you can add 50% of the time onto the expected deadline given to you by your builder. Budget-wise, well, it depends on how expensive your tastes are, but also sometimes how much the builder feels that you've got to spend. So do be very careful to make sure that there is some excess there for you to spend if necessary, because things also come up that you weren't expecting that you'll need to have extra reserves for. Number four. Now this is going to very much depend on your builder. They may do this anyway. Certainly if you've got a project manager, it should be part of their job. But it's worth sitting down with your builder and making them write down a plan for the works with deadlines and also associated costs. Now, first of all, this means they've got to commit a little bit, which may mean they prioritise you over other jobs, which they're likely to be juggling, but also it will make them think ahead, and also it gives you time to research items, decisions that might need to be made in the meantime. You'd be amazed how many times you're suddenly given a decision that you have to make in a very short space of time when actually there's quite a lot of research needed. I think one of my worst examples of this was the interior design is the part that I absolutely love, and on this current house I had months of dealing with really boring stuff like which walls need to be replastered, all the stuff that I just don't care about once the whole project is finished. But the interior design, I was given about 3 days to decide on the paint colours for every single room, and I was 3 weeks into having my first baby, and it was heartbreaking that I had to make those decisions in such a short space of time. So make sure he's committing to that plan, and it gives you time to schedule when you are going to be making those decisions too. Number 5. Keep an eye on things, and I mean a daily eye on things. If you're not living in the property, if you're renting somewhere else whilst it's taking place, it is so worth doing a trip every day, because you'll be amazed at how much has been discussed but how little is being communicated to the guys that are actually carrying out the work. And quite often the builder you deal with is not on site every day, and he's subcontracted to other people that are sort of generally doing their own thing. So it is worth being quite annoying but really keeping an eye on what's going on, and that the things that you've asked for are actually taking place. Number 6. Now this follows on from the last one, and it could probably annoy some people, but I think actually in the end it's going to be helpful, is write everything down. So I've had builders before that sit there very dutifully with their notepads and write everything down that you're discussing. I had one once just leave their notepad behind and it was open. I didn't flick through it, of course. And I noticed that for all the different jobs, he had all these random notes. There was no labelling, so he couldn't possibly know whose was whose. So I was probably just about to get Doris's dolphin tiles that she wanted in her bathroom because he had no idea who they belonged to. Plus, he left his notebook with me for ages, so I don't know how he could possibly be using that for the work he was doing. So make sure that you are responsible for writing things down. Now, this may sound really anal, but I basically did a plan for every single room. It had detailed bullet points as to what I wanted in those rooms, and it had diagrams accompanying it. I pinned them to the door of each room. There was a central folder that also had them that was kept downstairs. I had a folder and I gave one to my builder. Now, the guys on the job said they'd never had that before, and they said it was really useful. But the other point to make is only expect them to actually follow 75% of what you've written down, even though it's there in black and white in front of them. But just imagine if it wasn't there, how little of that would get done. And what you find is they'll make decisions on the spot because they don't really want to have to call you. Communication isn't always the best. And then you find that later on you discover something you'd asked for hasn't happened. By this stage, you're already past the deadline. So you just think, do you know what, I'll just go with that because you can't be bothered with the time and the money because it will cost you in the end to correct that. Number 7, don't be afraid to seek a second opinion. Now, hopefully you're going to get one of the good guys who really takes pride in his work and desperately wants a good outcome for your project. However, there are some builders out there that just want an easy life. And particularly if they've quoted for the full job, the easier route is always going to be the cheaper route as well, in the short term, not necessarily the long term. So, for example, if there's something you really want in your house and they seem a little bit reluctant or they're giving you every excuse under the sun, just speak to another builder or another tradesman, find out why it might be that they're being resistant to this idea. And you'll get the full picture then and know exactly where you stand. And don't be afraid to stick to your guns. So for example, the ceiling, Victorian ceiling I was talking about earlier, we stuck to our guns on that even though we were told that it really wasn't worth holding on to. And we're so pleased we did now. Absolutely beautiful ceilings and there's no need to rip them down and replaster. Number 8. Keep an eye on the weather. Now this sounds funny, but you will be given the excuse that the weather's not right for certain jobs or they just don't turn up because of the weather so many times. Now, I do weather presenting and that's not an excuse that builders can use of me, and you'd be amazed how many funerals they've needed to go to, including a dog funeral. So it's worth keeping an eye on the weather report and you can almost preempt the different things that they need to do, and maybe if you can see that there's some wet weather coming up, you could suggest that there's some indoor work they could do instead. Number 9, get a load of these. And I'd like to point out this is not part of my interior design advice. This is one of my many dust sheets. I tend to get duvet covers, curtains, sheets from charity shops. I've got bags and bags of them because you are going to be very precious about your freshly painted walls and your pale carpets. However, the tradesmen coming in to finish off the snagging list and make repairs are just going to be focused on the task in hand, and what they tend to do is not notice the debris that they're leaving everywhere else. So preempt that by covering absolutely everything that matters. And finally, number 10, and this is also my home coaching tip for the day. Visualize the end result. Now I like to think of a scenario like me sipping champagne in my beautiful new kitchen, because this is going to be a stressful situation. No matter how good your builder is, no matter how well you manage the project, houses have a tendency to throw up things that you can't possibly preempt, and it can take its toll on your health and it can take its toll on your relationship if you are embarking upon this with your partner. So imagine the two of you celebrating with everything done and dusted, because it will be worth it in the end, I promise you that. And one day you will forget about the stress and probably start to do your next project as well if you're anything like me. So I think that's my rant over for today, and I'll see you next time.